You have 20 seconds left. Admit it, or I put the photo on the table for everyone. You can't. No, wait, listen. I've been waiting years. Talk fast. Put that down. You don't know what you're doing. A hand slammed down hard enough that the echo snapped the room silent. Glass rattled on the oak table. The documents shook as the photo slipped free, revealing something no amount of fast talking could hide. A muscle in his jaw jumped. She locked eyes with the one face in this family who ever truly knew how much she'd lost. You don't scare me anymore, Uncle, not one bit. For a heartbeat, every sound in that courthouse evaporated. It was only the four of them and the weight of 4 generations staring out from that faded photograph. Everyone wanted to look away. But to understand how she ended up at that table, with everything on the line and nothing left to lose, you'd have to go back to the cold November wind cutting across the Newton County cliff, long before a secret could upend a town. By the time the Newton County Bank foreclosed on her truck, Mallory had $74, 3 prescription bottles for her left leg, and a notice from the sheriff's office. Sheriff's sale of the old cliff acreage in 48 hours. The blue envelope felt heavier than a brick when she gripped it outside the post office, cursing all the stubborn women she'd ever been related to. Friday noon. Everything would go, all 3 acres and the decaying cabin clinging to the stone face beyond Jasper. It was all that her grandmother left after Mallory's architectural firm collapsed. Her own debts had ballooned, and every friend in the county evaporated the moment her name landed in bankruptcy filings. You're not going to get sentimental over that place, are you? Sneered her cousin Reed, stepping out of his over-polished new sedan, the door like a knife slicing cold air. They'll probably have to pay someone to cart off what's left. Mallory's crutch slipped in the grit as she steadied herself. Funny, it's what built our grandfather's business. You'd think you'd have some respect. Reed smirked, passing her an envelope stamped "Personal Effects Unclaimed." This must be the priceless relic everyone thinks you came back for. She didn't open it right away. Back in her rented room above Bartell's feed, Mallory appended the envelope. Out slid a rusted old dresser key, a penciled note. It might have been her grandmother's swooping cursive, a receipt from a long-defunct jeweler, and a dog-eared photo of a battered 1940s Philco radio. She frowned, bringing the note almost to her nose, tracing the faded message. What's lost is inside what others forget to hear. Mallory flipped the photo, one word written in pencil: listen. The county laughed at what she'd inherited, the rusty dresser. Folks always chuckled when she walked away from the reading with nothing but a wooden relic, but as she held the creased note, her grandmother's words burrowed into her chest. She wasn't ready to believe the story was over. If you've ever stood outside your life as it burned down and wondered if you missed some hidden signal, this story, Mallory's story, is yours. She paced the room, the weak radiator barely fighting off the November chill. Mallory pressed the old radio photo to her forehead, then grabbed her rucksack, crutch, and the battered blue folder with legal threats, and limped out before doubt could root her shoes to the floor. The drive to the Newton County cliff took 40 minutes, every second ticking down between darkening clouds and the warning rumble of distant tractors prepping field lines for winter. Her knee throbbed a protest with every gear shift. At one point, a flash of memory cut through, the first time she'd taken this road as a child. Her mother laughed, hair flying, and her Uncle Terry bellowed at them to close the windows or catch their deaths. That was before Terry buried the family business in a web of debts and shell companies, before she'd learned to hate numbers and empty family promises. She arrived at the cabin with the sun scraping the tree line. Termites had shorn grooves through the porch supports. Her grandmother's faded wind chime clung by a thread to the gutter. Mallory moved fast, scratching her way through overdense cedar and checking her watch every couple of minutes. Inside, the breath of old pine and stale molasses greeted her. She ground her teeth, eyes sweeping for the shapes she remembered: threadbare armchair, scarred wood stove, the monstrous old dresser. No sign of the radio. The dresser's bottom drawer refused to open, the lock jammed, until she fitted the key from the envelope and twisted hard. Nothing but yellowed newspaper, faded postcards, and Mallory caught her reflection in the warped glass of the 1940s Philco, sitting in the corner under a drape. The radio's dials were gone, the face dusty but somehow clean around the edges. She limped over, ran her hand along the walnut face, and realized the back panel was loose. Her phone stuttered in her jacket. "Sheriff's auction in 43 hours. You able to pay this time?" Mallory's heart hammered. Beneath the radio's back plate, someone had hollowed it out, replacing the original tubes with a carefully folded velvet-wrapped bundle. She peeled it open. Inside shimmered a necklace of bottle green emeralds, a ruby ring set in gold, and 2 pearl strands, their sheen unspoiled by decades in hiding. A low whistle pressed from her lips, unplanned. "Grandma, what the hell were you protecting?" She barely had time to breathe before her phone buzzed again. This time it was a blocked number, a man's voice thick with molasses and steel. "If you're up there, Mal, walk away while you've got the chance." Terry? Her uncle's drawl had never softened, even after he'd skipped the hospital the afternoon she broke her leg on his construction site. Even after the rumors about shell companies and paper titles started snaking through county commission meetings. Mallory pressed her phone hard to her ear. "You know I never cared about the cabin, Terry, but I'm not letting you bulldoze it." Silence crackled, then a low chuckle. "You step foot near that dresser and you'll find more than what you bargained for." The call cut out. Mallory stared at the pile of velvet, necklaces, rings, a battered envelope. The sheriff's sale loomed. Someone wanted this story buried deeper than any old dresser. She grabbed a flashlight and pried at the inside of the Philco, searching for hidden seams. Something caught, her nail scraped an edge. Out slipped a folded envelope, thicker than it looked, sealed with faded red wax. Her hands trembled. She broke the seal. Inside, nestled between brittle pages, lay a handwritten will dated 2 decades before the official one read at the courthouse. The signatures were her grandmother's and a witness. She flipped to the last page, where the county version left the land to the extended Downs and Sutter families. This will named only her in crisp, deliberate print. Mallory exhaled, heart vibrating so loudly she nearly missed the other slip of paper, an old photograph, the family lined up on the porch in 1962. In the right light, a thin strip of something shimmered behind the backing. She flicked the edge open with her thumbnail. A second document slid out, a ledger of land sales, every transfer traced with dates and names, none matching county records. She scanned for Terry S. and Reed's names. There 3 times in black ink, T. Downs, R. Sutter, and a scrawl, transferred under duress. Mallory's breath caught as lightning painted the lake below in raw gold through the window. A car engine roared closer, headlights cutting through the dark. She tensed, pulling the will and jewelry into her jacket. "You didn't come this far to quit," she muttered, hobbling fast. The front doorknob rattled. Mallory darted through the back into the brush. The jewelry box bit into her ribs as she crashed through rows of dying hydrangea. Behind her, tires spun on gravel. She ducked and waited, breath strangled. Voices above, Reed's sharp, "If you see her, call the sheriff. She has no right up here." She would prove them wrong. 41 hours until the sheriff's gavel fell. With new determination, she limped to her truck and sped off toward the only person who'd ever believed in her enough to question the family, Lindsay Runnels, property lawyer and former best friend. Mallory burst into Lindsay's cramped office, still quivering. Rainwater dripped onto the tile. Mallory thrust the will and jewelry onto Lindsay's desk. "Read, fast." Lindsay grabbed a pen, eyes darting between documents. "Where did you, Mallory, these signatures? This is the original." Mallory wiped her face, voice raw. "In the last place any lawyer would look." Lindsay skimmed the photo, pale. "Everyone said your family gave you nothing. This changes everything." Mallory's fingers pressed white against her knees. Terry and Reed, do any of these names pop up on county sale documents? Lindsay flipped the ledger. Not legally, but look, here and here, the same shell corporation bought up 3 parcels right after each transfer, and every time a portion ended up in someone's personal account. Mallory's face tightened. So it was all a shell game. Fake titles, fake signatures, the old will undoes every deal. Lindsay nodded, whispering, "In court, if you get this in front of a judge before the auction." A knock at the door interrupted. Lindsay's paralegal poked her head in. "Mallory, there's news from the county recorder. Some developer's attorney called for copies of your grandmother's paperwork." Mallory cursed, glancing at Lindsay. "Reed's striking faster than I thought. How long do we have?" Lindsay snatched her phone. "Sheriff Sale S at Friday noon. That gives us," she checked the calendar, 40 hours. "Mallory, if anything happens to this will, you lose everything." Mallory set her jaw. "We hide the original, you prep the court petition. I'll keep them busy." Lindsay squeezed her hand. "You need backup." Mallory shook her head. "No one expects me to fight." Raindrops hammered the windows as Lindsay busied herself copying the will and cataloging every necklace, ring, and strand. Mallory sat hunched, the velvet pouches spread on the desk. After years of being laughed out of boardrooms, minimized for the limp she never lost after that construction accident, this was her chance. This wasn't about jewelry, it was about roots, about proving a life's work wasn't for nothing. "You still have that stubborn streak," Lindsay whispered. Mallory smiled, hitching up her crutch. "Comes with the limp." They locked the originals in Lindsay's office safe and stepped out into the storm. Mallory's mind raced. If the family suspected she had the true will, they'd burn the whole county to keep her silent. Mallory headed straight for the only place she knew Terry would be, his office at the half-built condos overlooking Goose Lake. She drove through dark fields, tires skidding as mud churned beneath the wheels. At Terry's site, half a dozen pickups idled, their drivers' faces hammered by work and secrets. Mallory hobbled in, the jewelry box clutched to her chest. Rain dripped from her jacket, leaving small pools on the unsealed wood. Terry was at his desk, surrounded by blueprints. Reed leaned by the window, face tight with something that almost looked like fear. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," Terry barked, smirk failing to reach his eyes. Mallory dropped the jewelry box on the table. "Recognize these." Terry shot a glance at Reed. Reed sneered, but his hand trembled as he shifted it behind his back. Mallory's voice was sharp. "I know about the shell corporations. I know you faked the old will and used this land as a bargaining chip. Remember that accident 10 years ago? I never forgot." Terry sneered, unconcerned. "No one cares, girl. We play the game, we pay the fines, someone always looks the other way." Mallory slid the photo of the 1962 family lineup across the table. "Except now the rules have changed. There's a federal investigation coming, burial ground found under your new development, thanks to your greed. You mess with the wrong acres." Reed blanched. "You're bluffing." Mallory met his gaze, ice in her voice. "You want to lose everything, test me." Terry lunged at the jewelry box. Mallory jerked it away, crutch slamming the floor. For a split second she saw herself not as broken but as surviving, unforgiving. "Careful, Terry," she hissed. "You make one wrong move, I go straight to the tribe's council. You ever wonder why Grandma hid all this inside an old radio? Because she knew you'd never listen." Terry's facade cracked. He reached for his phone, breaking eye contact. Mallory pressed forward, ready, as machinery clattered outside, earth movers digging, but tonight no one ignored a burial ground under federal protection. She limped outside, rain stinging her face. The tribe's legal team met her at the property line, documents in hand. "Miss Downs, we have evidence your grandmother's land sits atop sacred ground. We'll testify. The sheriff's sale cannot continue." Mallory bowed her head, relief crashing through her bones. She finally turned her flaw into the proof no one else would even look for. She called Lindsay. "We're taking them to court. Civil, not criminal, but every asset gone. This is ending now." A flock of starlings whirled above, black clouds parting for the thinnest scrap of dawn. The courthouse on auction day was packed, townsfolk pressed in hunting for the scent of scandal as much as a windfall. Mallory sat at Lindsay's side, jewelry box tucked beneath her crutch. Judge Willard presided, his silver-rimmed glasses foggy with distraction. Terry and Reed, her uncle and cousin, waited in the front row, flanked by 4 other desperate relatives in power suits, none able to meet her gaze. Mallory's left leg throbbed, pain beat for beat with her old heartbeat. She closed her eyes and gripped Lindsay's hand under the table. Bailiff announced the auction, 3 parcels, 1 old cabin, starting bid $15,000. Terry was first on his feet. "We'll take all 3, Your Honor, as per the will on file." Lindsay leapt up, holding the copy of the old will. "Objection, Judge, we have material evidence never previously reviewed that invalidates the current will." A ripple shuddered through the room. Judge Willard frowned. "Miss Runnels, you're submitting new evidence during an active sale." Mallory rose on her crutch, voice clear as the lake wind. "Your Honor, I have in my possession not only the original will but proof of an extended campaign of fraud. 30 years of land theft, shell companies, and fabricated signatures, all traced to my uncle and cousin." The courtroom hushed. Lindsay stepped forward, placing the original will, photograph, and land ledger in front of the judge. Judge Willard glared over his glasses. "Is this true?" Terry barked, panicked. "You can't take her word for it. She's unstable, lost her business to her own mistakes." Mallory flashed, backbone straight. "My mistakes? I wasn't the one buying properties in other people's names, Terry. You think no one can see through all that paperwork?" She laid the jewelry out, bright against the table's dull wood. Gasps choked the front row. "These pieces," she said, raising her voice. Her entire jewelry collection, missing for years, hidden away for the one person Grandma knew would never sell her out for a quick buck. Terry blustered. "No one cares about old jewelry." Mallory stepped in. "It's not about the jewelry, it's about who earned the land, who protected it, and who the real thief is." Reed's hands fisted at his sides. "You're lying, none of that ledger means anything." Mallory slammed a photo frame onto the table, startling everyone. "You have 20 seconds left, admit it, or I put the photo on the table for everyone." Reed sputtered. "You can't, no, wait, listen. I've been waiting years, talk fast." Reed lunged, knocking the photograph loose. Its backing split inside, a second page, complete with his signature, slipped out. Lindsay swooped it up, placing it on Willard's bench. "Put that down, you don't know what you're doing." Terry's voice cracked, desperate, finally exposed. Mallory's glare sliced through him. "You don't scare me anymore, Uncle, not one bit." The room seemed to snap in half, oxygen sucked away. For the first time, the mask peeled from Terry's face. He slumped. Judge Willard seized the evidence. Sale delayed until further review of this material. He motioned to the federal representatives from the tribal council. Given the discovery of the burial ground, all transfers, auctions, and developments are frozen pending federal and tribal investigation. A stunned silence rattled the old timbers overhead. Terry started forward, babbling, "Your Honor, she's disabled, she's got a vendetta." Willard raised a palm. "Mr. Downs will let the facts speak." Lindsay wrapped an arm around Mallory. "You did it." Mallory shook, not from fear, but from something brighter. Federal agents approached Terry and Reed, reading out orders for asset freezes. The extended family blanched as the details spilled. Properties seized, accounts emptied, every shell company listed for civil forfeiture. The townsfolk watched, murmurs rising. Some eyes glittered with satisfaction, others with doubt. But Mallory saw, clearest of all, her grandmother's face in the jury's reflection, a ghost finally given peace. 4 months passed in the fragments of that courtroom afternoon. The Sutter and Downs properties went up for federal and tribal investment. The recovery of the burial ground prompted a reckoning across Newton County, all those old secrets unearthed for public accounting. Terry and Reed lost their homes, their land, and the polished cars they'd parked on everyone else's pain. Civil judgments stuck. Their accounts evaporated month by month. When the dust settled, Mallory's name was cleared, her debts discharged, her business losses finally offset by court-ordered restitution. More startling yet, the townsfolk changed, too. Where once she'd been pitied or ignored, now Mallory was asked to run for city council, then, a few months later, mayor. She took her seat at the dais without a limp, head held higher than ever. One old radio and the secrets stuffed inside it had brought her full circle, not rich, not crowned, but heard. Her grandmother's dresser landed in pride of place, every velvet pouch dazzling in the sunlight, a reminder that listening mattered more than shouting. So it was, in a town carved into cliffs and stitched with muddy secrets, that silence finally gave way to the thunder of truth. Sometimes what's most valuable isn't what you're given, it's what you refuse to let be forgotten. If you've ever fought to reclaim the ground under your own feet and struggled to be seen on your terms, take this story as proof. Your silence has power too. And you never truly know who's listening or what you'll find until you risk turning over what everyone else has left to rust. Mallory's mornings became quieter, but her world was anything but small. The phones in City Hall rang endlessly. Word about the tribal partnership and the recovery of the burial ground had whipped up not just interest but responsibility. Tribesmen and descendants came from 4 states to witness the land's slow restoration, and county reporters who'd once looked past Mallory now lined up for comment. She obliged, not out of pride, but for all the silenced years. She took, each day, the long route up to the old cabin at the cliffs. No more crutch, just an indelible ache in her leg, predicting rain better than the Doppler ever could. Lindsay joined her more often than not, carrying survey maps and mugs of strong coffee. They'd perch on splintered porch steps while sunlight spilled over the edgeland, sometimes talking, sometimes not. "Hard to believe it's almost spring," Lindsay said, crunching across last year's leaves. Mallory nodded, staring at the far ridgetop where surveyor flags bobbed like pennants. "Last winter feels like a lifetime ago." Lindsay gave her a gentle grin. "Fewer secrets this year at least, you sleep any better." Mallory considered this. She did not perfectly and not every night, but the fretful dreams of loss and pursuit came less often, replaced by quieter images. Her grandmother in the garden, the shimmer of pearl and emerald, the photo now mended and hung above her new desk. "It still feels borrowed," she admitted. "The peace, I mean, like the land waiting to see what we do with it." Lindsay nudged her arm. "That's as it should be, don't you think?" A wind caught the wind chime over the door, the same tarnished one that survived tempests and inheritance disputes, and Mallory laughed. "I do." Footsteps crunched behind them and Mallory tensed instinctively. The habit lingered, though the dangers had changed face. The woman who approached was tall, middle-aged, her hair drawn tight, Dr. Abby LeClaire, leader of the Tribal Council's research delegation. Her voice was all warmth. "Mallory, I hope I'm not interrupting. We finished the first round of field work." She gestured toward a cluster of tents near the trees where grad students plotted grids and sifted earth with reverence. Mallory straightened, smile ready. "Never an interruption, Dr. LeClaire. Find anything new?" Abby grinned. "Artifacts, mostly beads, broken tools, some pottery shards. Nothing gold or headline-grabbing, but it means a lot to see them come home." Mallory glanced at Lindsay, who beamed approval. She understood better every day that the headlines weren't what mattered. Abby continued, "We'll have to limit construction on this part of the land. The tribe's voting to open a small cultural center here. I know it changes the cabin plans." It did sting briefly, but Mallory's jaw unclenched as she spoke. "It's right, it was never supposed to be redeveloped. The land waited long enough to be respected." She thought of her grandmother's note, "What's lost is inside what others forget to hear." Abby touched her shoulder gratefully. "You'll be leading the partnership if you want it." Mallory's pulse kicked. "Are you me? I'm no expert. I mean, I'm just the one who found the old radio." Abby laughed, kind and delighted. "You're the one who listened. That counts for more in these hills than any degree." Mallory blinked back fierce tears. "Then I'm in." Lindsay practically quivered with pride. No one said so, but she squeezed Mallory's hand, and for a moment, the last frost of winter seemed to lift. That night, Mallory returned to the cabin to gather her things. She let herself linger in each room, pausing over carved mantels, old photo frames, and places where the light fell in familiar pools, unchanged by the storms outside. She rested at the dresser, her grandmother's, now cleaned and shining with lemon oil. Inside its drawers, velvet lay snug as skin. She laid out the emerald necklace, the ruby ring, and the pearls, letting lamplight refract over each. Then, on a slip of new parchment, she wrote a note almost as brief as the one her grandmother left for her. "If you're reading this, listen before you look. What's precious cannot always be seen or spent." She tucked the note beneath the necklace, locked the drawer, and placed the old photo, her family on that porch all those summers ago, atop the dresser. She let her fingers drift over worn faces, one by one, the brave, the broken, the cruel, the silent, all of them part of her. Footfalls again. She startled, heart hammering, but this time it was only Lindsay, holding a to-go bag from the diner. "I thought you'd forget supper." Lindsay grinned, brandishing a pie. "Hush," Mallory scoffed, but welcomed the warm pastry and warmer company. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Lindsay shook her head, mouth full of cherry. "If you'd told me last year we'd be fighting tribal lawsuits, shell companies, and holding a jewelry appraisal in a federal case, well, I'd have got you committed." Mallory snorted, "Me first." They ate together as the night deepened, swapping stories over the whir of the old radio, which Lindsay had finally coaxed into working with a jury-rigged Bluetooth speaker. The familiar lilt of country jazz filled the little room. For the first time in memory, Mallory could simply be. The next morning, Mallory made her way to the city council meeting. Her limp was nearly gone, though she walked with a measured pace. Some things linger to keep you honest. The council chamber was full, the air sharp with curiosity and new hope. Ruth Ferguson, who'd run the corner store since Eisenhower, raised a hand as the meeting opened. "Miss Mayor, Mallory, what about the festival grounds for Founders' Day? Will they move now that the cliffs are preserved?" Mallory smiled. "We'll work with the tribe on public events. The sacred area's off limits, but the rest will be open for history walks, picnics, stargazing, for everyone. It's still our home, just made whole." Scattered applause broke out. It startled her, but she accepted it, if only for all those years she hadn't been heard. Later, as she packed up her notes, a wrinkled hand gripped her arm. It was Mrs. Bohannon, whose late husband once farmed the low lots before even her grandfather's day. "My Robert used to say there's no end to the past if you don't clean it up," Mrs. Bohannon declared, peering at Mallory with watery conviction. "You cleaned it, honey. There's no shame in limping if you got somewhere." The pure humor and the truth of it rang out. Mallory blinked, surprised by a warmth that felt new and old at once. After the meeting, Mallory called Lindsay, who answered on the first ring. "You ready for the interview circus?" Mallory laughed. "Bring it on, I've got stories that need listening." The days blurred with a routine that never lost its luster. Council meetings growing longer as more people showed up, local press requesting updates on the burial site, and plans for the new cultural center expanding with each input session. Federal grant officers in crisp suits churned through Newton County, asking questions, checking records, congratulating her a little too formally. But Mallory had changed too. Where self-doubt once crept after her like a shadow, steadiness replaced it. She found herself advising neighbors facing their own property disputes, acting as a bridge between council members and the tribal liaisons. Her grandmother's words pressed close in moments of solitude. "Listen. Wait. give every voice its silence. One day, while Mallory sat reviewing blueprints for a new community pavilion, a thin envelope slid under her office door. No return address. She hesitated before picking it up. Unease still had hooks in her heart. Inside, just a scrap of paper in a spiky masculine hand. You think you've won, the Downs never forget nor forgive. Watch your back. She stared for a long moment, pulse quickening, fighting the familiar urge to flee. But she wasn't running this time. She dialed Lindsay, another anonymous threat, want to see. There was a long pause on the line before Lindsay answered. Let them watch. They're powerless now, courts, feds, the whole town S on your side. Mallory exhaled, the knot in her gut loosening. Yeah, I guess they finally are. Even so, she moved with caution that week, collecting dusk mail and daylight, doubling her walks with the neighbors' farm dogs for vigilance. But nothing came of it. If Terry or his ilk lingered, their hands were stayed by fear of discovery, not vengeance. Rumor had it Terry was living 2 counties over, scraping by with odd jobs and misery, cut off from the old family protection rackets. Reed had skipped town, warrants trailing in his wake. In Newton County, Mallory's name drew only respect, sometimes awe. She wore it carefully, not proud but not shrinking either. Weeks passed. The new tribal cultural center rose at the edge of the ridge, cedar and limestone blending into the hillside. On opening day, Mallory stood at the ribbon with Dr. LeClaire, surrounded by council members, tribal elders, families, and a crush of small-town reporters. Abby lifted the microphone, looking out at the crowd. We never would have reclaimed this space without a partner who valued more than profit. Mallory Downs, may all who follow here as clearly as you have. Applause burst louder than any thunder over the cliffs. Mallory found herself at the mic, words gathering at her lips, not practiced but genuine. All my life, she began, I wanted proof I belonged. I thought it'd be something you could weigh or spend. Today I know it's this, land respected, stories told, hands joined across what used to divide us. Thank you for letting me listen. It was perhaps the briefest speech on record in Newton County. It echoed anyway. That afternoon, Mallory wandered to the radio, now cleaned and at last functional. She tuned it to an oldies station and propped it on a table in the new center's meeting room. Light poured in, gold on timber, as voices from half a century ago fizzed through the static. A little girl, one of the tribe's youngest visitors, sat by her side. What's that, Miss Mallory? Mallory smiled, twisting the tuning knob. A storyteller, just one who talks in music and news and voices from the past. The girl blinked, awed. Did your grandma listen to it? All her life, Mallory replied softly. She left secrets inside it. The girl's eyes widened, excitement full. Can I hide secrets too? Mallory winked. If you do, make sure someone will listen for them. They sat together, generations bridged by static, time spinning in a gentle, unending circle. As spring exploded over the cliffs, dogwoods blooming, new grass threading through the old burial ground, Mallory found herself invited to every table, every porch, every family's history. She listened to the hard stories and the easy ones, the whispered apologies for what had been overlooked or lost. Saturdays, she'd meet Lindsay on the porch, sweet tea between them. Some afternoons brought Dr. LeClaire and her researchers, laughter churning with the breeze, plans forming for oral history projects and school trips. The dresser, now a centerpiece in the cultural center, became a kind of shrine. Children slipped notes into its drawers just as she once had, their scrawled dreams tucked alongside her grandmother's necklace. Mallory always locked the drawer with the old key, its tarnished brass never losing its shine. It was Lindsay who finally asked, late one evening as they watched fireflies drift above the ridgeline, "What will you do next?" Mallory let the silence stretch, listening to the wind, the chattering insects, the music from the porch radio. "Keep listening," she said at last. "It's what saved me. Maybe it'll save someone else too." Lindsay grinned. "And if some old crook or new developer shows up, hungry for what's left?" Mallory tossed her hair back, stronger now, unyielding. Let them try, my voice carries now, and I don't stand alone. They laughed full and without fear, as the dusk slipped between hill and water, old injuries healed, new roots sunk deep. In the years that followed, Newton County changed. The cultural center revitalized the town. The land grew wild and protected, open to story keepers but closed to thieves. Mallory, never rich in dollars, became wealthy instead in gratitude, respect, and the slow, gentle accumulation of clean days. She never lost sight of her scars or her lessons. The Philco radio remained in the center, broadcasting the county's new oral history project, schoolchildren interviewing elders, moments of laughter flickering through the static. And the dresser, with its secret drawers and velvet memories, sat at the edge of every gathering, a testament to what listening makes possible, even when the world wants only noise. Sometimes, when no one else was near, Mallory would unlock the bottom drawer, run her fingers over the pearls, and whisper to her grandmother's memory, a thank you and a promise. Whatever storms came, her roots would hold. And when someone new came seeking hope or the truth or just a foothold in a complicated world, Mallory would listen, truly listen, and offer the only gift that had ever changed her story. A quiet heart, an open ear, and the power finally of being heard. The end.